Hey everyone, I think this thing is on. So, let me figure out how me, I think this works. Alright, I'm gonna triple check that this is functioning. Um, I'm hoping this works. So let me just quickly try this out on my phone. It seems to be working. Sweet. Sweet. Okay. I don't think I've ever streamed on YouTube. So I probably don't have all the settings the way I want to, but I'm using OBS, which is the same software that I've used for streaming on Twitch. I use that for Periscope. So thank you everyone for weighing in. All right, so I'm just going to do this at the top of every single live. What I'm looking over here. I should be able to look over here. So I'm going to do this at the top of every live agenda review, which is show you how you can find the agendas and keep track of all of BART Board business. One of the main reasons of this is because I mentioned last time, but BART is moving everything to be digital. So I am no longer getting physical printout of the agenda packets. So I have to go online just like all of you, which is one of the reasons why having this sort of setup is pretty important so that I can be using my computer and sharing my screen and everything. While in the past, it was a little bit quaint, but I could like hold up the agendas and be like, hey, take a look and flip through the presentations. It's great that we're digitizing BART. It's saving a lot of paper, and this is really a BART-wide, a district-wide initiative that is also going hand in hand with our move into the new BART headquarters. So how you get the agenda is you go to bart.legistar.com. You can see I go to it pretty often. So you go to bart.legistar.com, and it's a little bit funky, but if you're used to Legistar, this looks like all the other Legistars. So if you don't see anything down here or you're seeing old dates, just use this drop-down menu and make sure you hit 2021. Or you can do like this month or whatever. And then you'll see all of the different advisory committees. You'll see all of the oversight committees. And all of the board committees, and then the BART Police System Review Board. So this is great. I think I actually made this request to make sure that BART CRB gets onto Legistar. I actually don't think it was before, but this is great to see. So obviously we had the January 14th meeting, so this is the January 28th meeting. What you want to click is either agenda, and this will jump straight to the PDF, or you can click on meeting details. So I'm going to show you how both of them work. So how all documents in Legistar works is that you click, when it has this little PDF icon, if you're doing this on a desktop or a laptop, it will download the PDF. So I use Chrome. So you see how it downloads a PDF and then you open it up. If you're viewing on mobile, like when I'm doing this on my own phone, it'll just pull it up. It just does automatically. So up to you how you want to view. If you hit meeting details, you'll see each of the agenda items all enumerated. However, this only covers and there's only like different items for things that actually have presentations. So for example, and these are not numbered correctly. So for example, roll call at the top doesn't have its own line here, which sort of makes sense, but this is basically where you can go and download everything. So say you're like looking at this and you're like, wow, I want to see the 2020 customer satisfaction survey results. I'd write BART and I actually got surveyed, and I want to see what those results are. It's a little tricky to figure out how you actually find it all. So you actually have to click on this, and that goes to that specific item, and all the attachments are at the top here. So then usually what you want to take a look at is the presentation. So again, when I click on this, it's going to download the PDF, and then you have to open it. But you can open it in Chrome or whatever your browser is usually. One new addition, thanks to our new president, Mark Foley, he made a request that there can be a one-click so that you can download the entire PDF packet. So this obviously is huge, right? Like it's hundreds of pages. So it's like all of these PDFs all combined in the order that they are going to be heard. With that said, it's really helpful, especially if you truly want to flip through everything. And certainly for BART board members, like this is what we're going to be following along with. So if you want that, you can see now at the top, you can see this link that says full board packet. So I'm going to download that. Let's see how big it is. It's 24.7 megabytes. It's not too bad. And I am running on Sonic Fiber, but I am not hardwired. I am wireless with my new computer setup, as I don't want wires everywhere. I used to run a wire and like use painter's tape and run this probably like 30-foot Ethernet cable, but no longer. Okay, so this is all downloaded. Recognizing it's like 10:30 right now and pretty late, I'm not going to go through the whole agenda in depth, but I will call out some specific things. I'm just checking to make sure that this all seems to be working. No one's tuned in, but that's cool. That's cool. I just want to make sure this is functional. Okay, so I'm going to go through this really quickly. As is typical, roll call, pledge of allegiance, and introduction of special guests. And then on the consent calendar, there's a bunch of items. We are approving the minutes. And then we also have gotten our new committee assignments, and this comes every single year. So in December, we elect the new board president and board vice president. So our president now is Mark Foley. Our vice president is Rebecca Salzman. And so we, as the board, elected them to be in their positions, and then that board president determines the committee assignments. Our committee assignments are not super important because most of our committees, and I'll show you in a minute, we do committee as a whole. Let me just show it to you. Let me just do everything in order. What? This is okay. I don't know what's going on. So these standing committees, we do them as committees of the whole. If you, for some reason, follow the SF County Transportation Authority Board, they do the same thing, which is that these standing committees are done as part of the full board meeting. These special committees have different meeting dates and times. So we just formalized the audit committee, so that no longer is meeting ad hoc. That is now meeting and should begin meeting on a regular meeting schedule. There's a labor negotiations review committee. I serve on that. Again, it's an ad hoc committee, so we were meeting monthly, but not on like a set monthly schedule, but we were meeting monthly just about starting from like May of last year. There's a personnel review committee. This gets us prepared for any really personnel related issues, any of the board appointed officer changes. They figure out job descriptions for the board appointed officers, and that's pretty important right now. And then there's a joint committee between VTA and BART. And then I just saw that this is a thing. There's a new redistricting committee. So this is really exciting because, well, first of all, the BART districts, I don't even know if I'd call them gerrymandered. They're just like really weirdly shaped. So let me go through each of them quickly. I think it's worth it. So audit, that's going to be a new committee, and it's comprised of um, 3 board members, and there's also going to be additional, shoot, I like read all this information, 2 or 3 people that are non-board members but have relevant experience to auditing. And it will oversee a lot of different functions, but we'll be working with our new Inspector General as well. Um, Labor Negotiations Review Committee, this really only needs to meet as labor issues come up, and usually that has to do specifically with the contracts. Um, so we did meet regularly, and these are all open to the public, and they're publicly noticed. These are all Brown Act bodies, all of that. Um, so we were meeting very regularly last year because we want to really prepare ourselves for the um, ending of SEIU, ATU, and AFSCME's labor contracts. So those 3 unions make up, overwhelming majority of BART employees are our frontline workers, they're our train operators, they're, a lot of different folks. So we want to get ahead of that. So we were meeting pretty regularly, and that helped set us up for, the board conversations, including the closed session conversations around the labor contracts, which the board voted successfully. I was in the yes vote to renew those contracts, where there would be no pay increases in the first year. There'd be no salary increases, no cost of living adjustments for that first year, and that future years would be tied to ridership return. Um, the BART Police Officer Association, the BART Police Managers Association contracts are up in the June 30th of next year, June 30th, 2022. So it's possible that, the Labor Negotiations Review Committee will want to meet again if that happens, but that's that. Personnel review is important because we go through annual reviews. It's important right now because we have one new board appointed officer in the Inspector General position, and we hired Harriet Richardson in August of 2019. And so that's a relatively new position. So having a personnel review committee really going over that is important. And it's just like that committee just does all personnel related matters. And like my understanding is that it sets forth like job descriptions when we need to do hiring, and we are going to need to do hiring because a couple board appointed officers have taken up the district retirement incentive program. And so there's that. And they also do the first round of interviews. So it's great. Bev has been really great as a chair. Then there's a VTA partnership, which has been really important. I don't know if it formed while I've been on the board, but it's been like one of the main venues for all the conversations about the Silicon Valley Berryessa extension. Um, and then the ad hoc committee, the redistricting committee is happening because of the 2020 census and the need to redistrict BART board districts. There's all these other liaisons. I'm not going to go through them. So the standing committees, I'm super excited that President Foley has recommended me to chair the administration committee. So how this works is that when we get to each of these items, that chairperson actually facilitates that section of the meeting. For all the other parts of the meeting, the president of the board is facilitating and chairing the meeting. Administration is really huge because it's like the budget committee. So all the budget things go there. And usually the COVID updates have been there, but the COVID update this time is under engineering and operations actually. So a lot of things go before the admin committee. Engineering operations is great that Latifa is going to be chair. It was Bevan last year. This is, as it sounds, it's like a lot of contracts that we have to approve. You'll see when we go through it. And then sometimes it's just called E&O. And then planning, public affairs, access, and legislation, which is called the PAL or PAL committee, whatever. That's going to be Robert Rayburn as a chair. He was a chair in 2019, my first year on the board. And there, do you have to achieve quorum with the standing committees to discuss those issues? Um, I've never thought about that. That's a good question. However, we almost always have full attendance at all of our board meetings. It's currently very rare for anyone to miss really any portion of a meeting. Um, I recall Deborah Allen didn't come to the second December 2019 meeting because I remember she was not there for the vote for who became board president and board vice president. With that said, like that meeting is very short. It's usually just like a celebration with the unions and with the workers. Um, we do like a toy drive. So, I mean, short of like the voting for president and vice president, like I'm not like super mad about that. Like that's like one of the smallest meetings that we have, but everyone almost always attends the board meetings. Sometimes people have to step away for a minute. I've done that a couple times maybe, but I haven't stepped away for more than like 15 minutes at a time. Um, Short of that, we all show up. Okay, so the PAL committee is a lot of policy related stuff. It's obviously the state legislation that we take position on. We get federal updates as well. Um, it's a lot of like any of the bike ped stuff. That all is there. Any station planning stuff is there. Um, I think the name sort of makes sense anyway. Okay, so I'm super excited to be chairing admin, and I hope that, you know, the approval of those committees goes smoothly. Okay, C and D. Um, C is a very small administrative thing. That's why it's on consent. And then D is a pretty small item, although, you know, we've all been briefed on it. And this is something that was brought forward by now President Mark Foley. And it's basically to say that in the pretty unlikely situation that a hotel developer is um, seeking to develop a hotel on BART land, that they have to go a little bit above and beyond when it comes to working with different service unions and hotel unions. The main ones unite here. Um, so it calls for a labor peace agreement. The truth is that out of all of the land use priorities on BART property, hotels are incredibly low, and there is literally no hotel on any BART property except for the one that is currently being developed at the Millbrae station. But literally, there is no hotels on BART land, and there hasn't been a real serious hotel developer that, you know, just a situation where it didn't work out. Like it just hasn't happened because BART really, and, you know, now with our TUD, you know, guidelines and everything in AB 2923, we are really prioritizing the building of affordable housing, dense affordable housing on BART land. That's part of transit-oriented development. And I would say secondary to that, it would be like smart commercial uses. So, you know, retail or office space. Hotels are, you know, they just don't generally make sense on BART land. So, anyway, this is a labor peace agreement in the case that a hotel developer, you know, approaches. Okay, then we got public comment. We have a controller treasurer's report. I'm not gonna go through that. And admin. So this is a thing that I'll be chairing if that item moves through on the consent calendar. This is a really, really lengthy presentation. So I'm just going to circle back to it at the end because there's one specific slide I want to share. This is a preview. So BART has done a customer satisfaction survey. I think it was like 13. This is like their 13th customer satisfaction survey, and they do it every 2 years. So they did one in September 2018 was when they actually administered the survey, which is like what's it called? When you administer them, like actually talking to riders, it's not like an online survey. This is like a statistically valid, actually talking to people who are actually writing BART intercept surveys. They're like basically intercept surveys. Um, so when we did that in 2018, I was obviously elected in November, and then it was presented to the BART board right after I joined at our annual board workshop, which that year was at the end of January. So during 2019, it was presented. It was very, very fascinating to me. It was probably not fascinating to BART staff at all because they're like, we knew this stuff. But to me, it was really fascinating. It was so data driven. And that has guided a lot of the decisions, that followed after that year and a half. We just did this customer satisfaction survey, obviously during the pandemic. So this was administered throughout the month of October. Um, the information is still, there's some pieces that are extremely fascinating about it. And what was I gonna say? Yeah, there's. Oh, what I was gonna say is that um, this is just initial preview overview of the results. In a couple months' time, the full report with all the written responses and all of that, and much deeper analysis, especially crosstabs, will be produced, and there will be more of a final report. For whatever reason, the 2018 customer satisfaction survey, it took a really long time to turn around that final report. It was like more like 6+ months. But I've been told by staff that they plan on turning around the report much sooner this time, which is great. And then on to engineering operations items. There's some pretty basic stuff here. And then there is a very lengthy update around the COVID-19 response. Includes a little bit around budget, but it's actually talking a lot about status of our workers, COVID protocol, and then there's like a couple slides around vaccine availability, but of course that information is changing on the daily as Governor Newsom has different announcements about vaccine readiness and availability, supply availability, and all those things. So consider that information fairly dynamic. And then under planning, public affairs, access, and legislation, we're going to be getting an update around the BART headquarters. So our lease ends in mid-July. And we are, we awarded the contract to this company called Turner, and we had pushed them to have fairly significant commitments to bringing on subcontractors that were local businesses and minority-owned businesses. So this is a little update about where things are at with that, along with some updates around the design build contract. So everything is tracking, which is great because is going to incur a lot of costs if there are delays to moving out, of course. So the great news is that we are tracking the timeline that we need to be able to move into the new building at 2150 Webster. I've mentioned in the past, but I was able to take a look before anything was going in. I was able to take a look and tour the building with several BART staff, the project lead for this, along with the district secretary. So yeah, that's great. Then we are getting an update on parking management, specifically the use of automated license plate readers. This was something that the board pushed for, mostly because of the complexity of the use of automated license plate readers. This also refers to a bill that Senator Scott Wiener has just introduced as somewhat of a follow-up of a bill that he had introduced a few years back to audit the use of ALPR. That audit was completed and presented about a year and a half ago. It was around the same time we were authorizing a very limited pilot. And when we authorized that limited pilot, we said, if and when you expand the use of ALPR, you must bring that back and show what information has been found, what the status of ALPR technology usage is before we make any decision to expand. So this is staff making good on that demand that the board made, basically. Lots of really interesting information here. The good news is that BART is generally at the forefront of best practices with ALPR technology. Um, the work in progress is to engage with Senator Wiener around his bill, and make sure that as best practices continue to advance and evolve, that we are maintaining our position being ahead of the curve. um, I think that's probably the best way to put it. And then last substantive item is a report on regional transit coordination. So there have been a lot of different initiatives. As you know, the BART Board, we unanimously approved the a resolution in support of the seamless transit principles. It was a resolution that Rebecca Salzman and I brought forward. It was great to have unanimous support. So as you know, folks, you probably know like Seamless Bay Area, and a lot of the work that they helped push, and that MTC is now taking on. So there's a regional transit coordination as well as fare integration. So what I'll say is that this is the same presentation that all the other transit operator boards are getting. So um, Caltrain, East Transit, WIDA, they're all getting this presentation. They either got it or they're about to. So same with BART, we're getting this presentation now. Um, and it presents, what the transit operator general managers um, are thinking, and like their conceptual framework of what regional transit coordination could look like. Um, I had a very long briefing with staff earlier today about this. I had a lot of questions, and a lot of things where I'm like, you need to look into this more. I'm not calling out specific recommendations or concerns. It's a little bit too early for that, but like I can see like this specific nugget being something that needs to be much more than just like a bullet point in your presentation. Um, this presentation is going to be a preview of something that is expected to come before the board at our annual board workshop at the end of February. So we've scheduled, and it'll be all virtual, a 2-day board workshop, and it's going to be February 25th, 26th. Did I get those dates right? Yep, it'll be Thursday, February 25th, 26th. Be a little bit shorter. I think, when we're in person, we can do like facilitate exercises. When we're stuck on Zoom, we don't want back-to-back days literally being on Zoom for like 8 hours. So I think it's gonna be like 5 hours each day. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a preview to that, but this is the same presentation that everyone else is getting. So it's a bit of a formality. I think it's good that they're prepping us now, given, we'll want to really dig into this at the board workshop in February. Okay, general manager's report, board reports, roll call for introductions and in memoriam. I did post this on Twitter at our January 14th meeting. It was literally the day after, 2 days after maybe, Ken Jones had passed away. And I closed the meeting in memory of Ken Jones and posted that letter that we sent along with some, nuggets about Ken Jones, some trivia about him, especially his long history as a real champion and a real leader for BART, including, some of the work that he actually did for BART. I think he worked with like a marketing consultant, but he was doing outreach specifically for BART, which was just incredible. All right, we have a couple things in closed session. We are finally doing the performance evaluation for Bob Powers, our general manager. That's great. And I don't know how we're going to do this, but we usually spend some time after our board workshop to also do a performance evaluation of Bob. It's always in a much more casual setting. And it's one of the only times where we, as 9 of us on the board, have that time with Bob. So it'll be really interesting since we won't have that. And his evaluation is basically timed with our board workshop, which is going to be in a month. Then we have a thing around Millbrae. Oh, I see. Okay. I missed this item. I was doing some of my briefings and this makes a lot more sense. Our controller treasurer has shared that she is planning on taking up the district retirement incentive program. And so our controller treasurer is a board appointed officer, so we have to, I think, go through that conversation, which I assume the personnel committee has been discussing. And then we'll announce anything from open session. Cool. So I wanted to show you one of the slides through here. Actually, I might want to show a handful of slides, but let me. So the good news is that the service attribute ratings are really good. So this is what I want to share. I don't know if I can bring up the 2018 one so easily. No, I can just use WebStar. It would have been January 2019. But in the board workshop. Quality of life. Okay, so I'm going to flip between the one that was done in 2018 and this one. I just want you to know, though, that, oh my gosh, why is it such bad quality? I don't know why it's such bad quality. You can hardly read this. Okay, whatever. This is what we got right now. You know what? BART satisfaction survey. Is this really 2018? Oh. Okay, the quadrant charts are what I really want to look at. I just want a combined quadrant chart. My ridership segment. So quadrant chart. So okay here. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. So what I have to warn you here is that the X and Y axis are not going to be the same, and everything, all of the service attributes increased just about from 2018 to 2020. And because of the way that the survey was being administered, BART staff decided to notably decrease the number of target issues they were asking people to rate. So this is comparing, Gala apples to Bosc pears, maybe. It's not quite apples to oranges, but it's not apples to apples either. So I just want to warn you on that. So this one is the ugly one. So I really find this quadrant chart helpful because it's a very easy way to look at the issues. So the x-axis says this is what BART is not doing well on, based on what our riders are saying. And this is what BART is doing really well on, based on what actual people riding BART, being surveyed as they are taking BART, what they say. And then the y-axis is importance. So if you're down here, this means that this is not that important to BART riders. I would say this is not important at all, while up here it is the most important thing. So if I could describe, this quadrant is good. This is like shit BART's doing really well on. So this is the stuff that is really important to our riders, and BART is doing well on those things. The further, in the positive direction you go, the better it is. Then you have stuff that is, this is the stuff that is not great. And the further you get to this corner, the worse it is. Fortunately, there's nothing in this corner. So this quadrant means stuff that BART needs to really work on. So this is stuff that BART is not doing as well on. Our writers just don't think that BART's doing a great job on it. And they are relatively important. But obviously they're different scales. And then down here is stuff. So here it's like cool, like these are the nice amenities, these are things that BART's doing well on, but like we don't care a ton about those things, not as much as the stuff up here. And then this is sort of the take it or leave it. This is stuff that BART's not doing great on, but out of all the other things is of less importance. So you sort of get it. I've asked BART staff, especially when they do the full report, to find a way to try to make this a little bit more apples to apples comparison of 2018 to 2020. And so this is the first time I'm sort of comparing them both. So like, let's just take something that BART's doing really well on. Overwhelmingly, our riders think on-time performance is good. I know that this does not jive with anything you are reading at all on Twitter. You see a lot of complaints. But when you actually survey actual human beings who ride BART, our on-time performance is great. And it's something, unsurprisingly, that's, more important than other things. You can see that there's a pretty big jump here. And this is all like, view this as relative, right? So like on-time performance is relative to its other things. So for example, our riders thought that BART was doing a better job on Clipper cars than on-time performance. Of course, people were not as interested and did not find that nearly as important as on-time performance, but you can sort of see the relative things. So you can see what I'm talking about. What I always find most interesting is, let's look at all the things that actual people actually riding BART find more important than fare evasion enforcement. How BART is doing on COVID, which we're doing really well, which I'm really proud of. How clean the interiors of our trains are. How clean the stations are. How available station agents are. How available elevators are. Are they working? The temperature of trains is more important than fare evasion enforcement. Unsurprisingly, on-time performance is more important than fare evasion enforcement. And addressing homelessness is significantly still more important than fare evasion enforcement, not the other way around. Well, I think a lot of people are out there conflating addressing homelessness with fare evasion enforcement. Our riders are actually able to make that difference. They are not conflating it, and they think addressing homelessness is more important, I would say, a priori, to fare evasion enforcement. So these are always really interesting. Like, for example, personal security is really important to folks, and they don't think BART's doing a great job. That is not being conflated with BART police presence. BART police presence is actually rating, right at the median of like what's important versus not important. People are like, middle ground on that. But you can see that there's a really big jump here. Again, like, you can psychoanalyze, typical BART rider, but this truly is the data that we are getting for our riders. And BART staff and the consultant that we brought on did a really good job of making sure we are getting really good feedback despite there being a pandemic. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show you is the change in the demographics of our current riders. So what you're going to see is comparisons between 2018, which I'll call pre-pandemic, versus a 2020 survey, which is in the midst of the pandemic. So what we are seeing is that our ridership is becoming more and more non-white during the pandemic, and the ridership is overwhelmingly more low income. So we now have 3/4 of our ridership as non-white. So you can I think you can comfortably conflate that with POC. So 75% of our ridership is POC. That's very, very high. That is absolutely not the makeup of the 9 people on the BART board. And 51% reported household incomes are under 50K, which is below the 200% poverty, federal poverty line in the Bay Area, which I think is 52K for a 4-person household. Pretty stark. This one was a little bit weird. Overall, our ridership does trend more like 20s, 30s. But we saw a pretty significant increase in number of people who are up there in their age. Not really sure. We are also seeing a far more transit-dependent population still taking BART. Not surprising. And what's interesting is 23% of people would not make the trip. So you're going to see the staff do the whole presentation, but I thought it was good to call out, especially the race and household income. I think what we are seeing is that more essential workers and more marginalized folks, so low income folks, people of color, still have to work, and their work cannot be remote. It's on the front lines, and they still are relying on BART. And this makes me believe more than ever how important BART is. And as frequent BART Board commentator Alita Dupree says, it is the people system. And I think these charts remind me of that. So let me close all that. And then I have been saying some stats and some numbers that were correct as of what the board had known, but I want to update you all on a few things. So our COVID response protocol's been great. This is what I wanted to tell you. So the last update that we had gotten was granted months ago, where there were very, very few number of positive employee cases. That's now increased to 132. Just to be clear, 132, I was told by staff, is not a subset of the 2100. It's just that through BART and through the, I can't remember the name of the company that does the testing for us. We have like a testing partnership so that our employees can get proper tests quickly, easily, accessibly. But the number of positive employee cases in total are 132. A very, very small number of them were very serious, but there have been 0 deaths. So knock on wood, thank goodness, there have been no employees at BART who have died because of COVID. And for there to be 132 positive employee cases, I think is also quite impressive, given that there are over 4,000, I think it's like 4,200 BART employees at this time. We had recent numbers when we were doing the retirement incentive program, but it's around 4,000. So that's incredibly impressive. And I think that goes to show that even with, essential workers and frontline system, BART is doing exceptional when it comes to taking, having a really strong COVID response. So in terms of how many of these people contracted COVID via BART, it's really hard to be able to confirm that. But as of what BART staff knows, very few, like very, very, very few cases were transmitted at BART. And there's only like 1 or 2 instances where they have decent certainty that there was transmission between BART employees, but that people are contracting, like BART employees are contracting COVID like elsewhere, like from a family member or from a friend or whatever, and then that gets brought to the workplace, is generally, out of those 132 cases, what staff thinks is happening. But anyway, I did want to give this update, and these are numbers while, no positive cases, good. I think that, versus what we are seeing across the country and the rise of COVID cases and the rise of deaths across the country, very proud of the work that BART has done to really work with our union partners and work with our employees to keep everyone safe. Because when you see these numbers, it means that we are doing the best job we can keeping our riders safe. You know, it if our employees, the frontline employees who are the ones who are like spending all the time in our system and we only have 132 cases of every kind of employee, like that's pretty good. Okay. There's some testing protocol and there's some vaccine readiness plan. But that's it. Okay, cool. That was sort of a quick agenda review. The BART board meeting is going to be tomorrow. It's a lighter-ish agenda, but I still think that this meeting is going to go several hours long. So we'll see. I poured myself a whiskey and drank literally zero of it. I did an ice cube in it, and the ice cube melted, so it's not that crazy. I don't think I have anything else that's fun to say. I'm tired. The reason this is so late is because I had a SF Democratic County Central Committee meeting tonight, and it's the first like real business meeting of SFD-CCC since end of October. So it was a lot, and it went until like past 9 o'clock, and then I played like Stardew Valley for like an hour just to decompress. But thanks so much for tuning in on this new format. Hopefully you like it. I feel like if I'm on YouTube, I have to say like smash that like button or whatever. I'm gonna try this out. I also really like streaming on Twitch, and when I stream on Twitch, I can also upload over to YouTube. But anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in at such a late hour, and hopefully I'll see you virtually at the meeting tomorrow. All right, good night.